Simply put, the bridge is critical to my business. The rebuilding of the bridge will be critical to my business's growth and the growth of the local economy. That matters to the people here. It matters to our future.
Like Tim Nelson, some of those who were invited to sit in the crowd to listen to the president's speech today were local business owners, many of whom are expecting to feel the direct impacts of the billion-dollar Blatnik investment. Northern News Now's Cara Kopp tells us more.
At the base of the Blatnik Bridge in Superior sits Earthrider Brewery, their iconic location bringing in thousands of visitors, which made them excited to hear President Biden talk about improving the bridge, even if that means running into some roadblocks during construction.
It's really important to have that bridge fixed in our backyard.
Each day, about half of Earthrider's visitors use the Blatnik Bridge.
It's critical to the success of our business.
So when President Biden spoke in their brewery Thursday about investing $1 billion into fixing the Blatnik,
for decades people talked about replacing this bridge, but it never got done until today.
They grew excited, even if that means the bridge will be closed for a while.
People come off the bridge and see us and can come visit us. But people can still access us from the Bong Bridge. And we get plenty of visitors that are on the Wisconsin side as well. But it's really important that that bridge gets done for us.
For Earthrider, fixing the bridge doesn't just mean bringing more business to their tap room. It also means having more business going outside of it, an improvement to transportation that other businesses are anticipating as well.
Our regional economy is so interrelated, and so to help support the industries that live here and the citizens that live here, it's fantastic.
Minnesota power leaders were also invited to hear Biden speak. For the Minnesota-based company, the president recognizing local investment in transportation infrastructure means more doors will open, especially since Minnesota Power already has some Superior projects in the works.
Minnesota Power has really been moving infrastructure forward in investing in the clean energy transition. Everything from wind and solar to new transmission lines to our Nemadji Trail Energy Center located here in Superior.
$1 billion bridge investment breathing life into our region. Both the Earthrider and Minnesota representatives I spoke to said they were also happy to hear Biden talk about the current economy. They said it gave them the confidence that they will thrive even when the Blatnik goes under construction. In Superior, Cara Kopp, Northern News Now.